Good evening. I'm Jason. Again, I just for this portion of the class, I wanted to discuss one Christian denomination that had an impact on American history. I decided to look at Catholicism. Me being Presbyterian, I thought this would be an interesting denomination to look at. In addition, it's because I also went to a Catholic university at Berry University, even though I myself am not Catholic. So again, there was a lot of interest in just to see some of that history and of how Catholicism has had a impact on American history. I don't think it's been based on some of the studies I've seen. There's not a lot of stuff from outside of the basic information we have about the Catholic missionaries coming in and converting Native Americans to the Christian faith. I think a lot of stuff is lost during really during the early years of the formation of the United States. But there has been they did have an impact during that time. I know that in an article by Catherine O'Donnell titled John Carroll and the Origins of an American Catholic Church from 1783 to 1815. She also references and states that historians of American religion have described the decades after the Revolution as the democratization of American Christianity and have focused especially on the American roots of the separation of church and state. Catholicism has been all but irrelevant to these accounts. She says that because most people don't think of the Catholic Church as was in terms of the early American history and how it had impacted and influenced history. But in Maryland, especially in her article, she talks about Maryland and she talks about the very first Catholic church being built and the first Catholic bishop who was the first Catholic bishop who was by the last name of Carroll. He One of the things he did was actually he was although he was part of the Catholic Holy Sees, he did stuff kind of outside of Catholic. He worked with other denominations. He was willing to work with people outside the Catholic Church, and again, he had a big influence in Maryland, which also, of course, they had one of the founding fathers was actually from Maryland, who would be a signatory of the U.S. Constitution. I think another area that a lot of people don't realize that in which Catholic has had an influence on American, it's actually in the medical field. Especially in around the early 1900s, you had the Catholic Medical Guild movements in the U.S. being formed. If you look at Jessica Martucci's article, "Religion, Medicine, Politics: Catholic Physicians Guilds in America from 1909 to 1932," she discusses a lot of those how really a lot of the concepts of medicine and that we still in higher education in the medical field that we're still incorporated in many universities in the U.S. as well as being practiced, still continuing practice. You also see some of those the popular medical facilities to this day, like St. Jude. In addition to that, in the early 1900s, you also had the formation of the nursing program. The Catholics had a very big influence in nursing. You have because nursing was becoming a vocation by the time the early 1900s to 1920s. You had the Sisters of Mercy and Sisters of Charity, in which they cared for the sick and underprivileged. So you saw a lot of outreach programs through the Catholics, which is still in works today. And that article, by the way, was by Julie Vila. Her title of that article was "Catholic Orders Influencing on Nursing." So I find that it's very interesting how we sometimes forget that that it wasn't just Protestants here in the U.S. You did have Catholics, and they were having an influence. You had also for example, the Catholic renewal in the 1960s and 70s. and which actually influenced a lot of, again, it had influences at a lot of universities, like at the University of Notre Dame and so forth. For us, and to this day, you still see some of the Catholic influences. A lot of the lot of people's focus. If you were to go on a chat board, you would see talking about abortions and stuff like people against abortion stuff, and they talk about a lot of them focus on the Protestants, but one of their early opponents against abortion was the Catholic Church. Even so, you still see history being made. So it's important to recognize the different historical values from not just the Protestant branches, but also look at the Catholic branches. It's really interesting. I thank you for your time. I hope you have a good evening. Thank you. Bye.